What's up, my plant lovers? Devin is back again, here to talk about one of my favorite plants that blooms during the holiday season every single year, and that is the holiday cactus. Many of us love this plant because they grow for a really long time. They produce flowers effortlessly. They have that gorgeous kind of overflowing nature, and they bring us color inside the home during the dark, cold winter months. So how do we grow it? How do we care for it? How do we propagate it? And how do we encourage it to rebloom so that we have more than one season of flowers on our plants every single year? So let's talk about it. Okay, so there's actually three main types of holiday cactus that all come from the genus Schlumbergera. There's a Christmas cactus, a Thanksgiving cactus, and an Easter cactus, but they're all pretty much grown the same. So we're just gonna generally talk about how to grow all of them so that whichever one you have, you will have success with. They're all very, very similar in the way that they should be cared for. The genus Schlumbergera is actually native to the rainforested areas of Brazil. Schlumbergera is part of the Cactaceae family, so it is definitely a cactus, but it differs quite a lot from many of the cactus that we would typically grow or would think about when we close our eyes and visualize a cactus. This isn't a desert-dwelling, sun-loving cactus. Grown in the canopy of large trees, this is going to be used to having bright indirect light rather than that direct sunlight. So don't put it in that southern facing window. You don't need to give it a grow light. Keep it in a bright, well-lit room, and that's going to be perfect for keeping your plant healthy year-round. So the Schlumbergera, the holiday cactus, are also an epiphyte, which means they actually will kind of grow in the cracks and crevices of other plant life. So you can imagine like a tree with a branch, and it kind of just is growing right in that crevice between the trunk and the branch. That's where these plants actually grow. So what that should tell you is that this is a plant that likes to have a confined root system. It doesn't want to be swimming in some big pot. It loves to be in a smaller pot that it's able to just kind of overflow out of. So it's a good candidate to hold off on replanting, transplanting into a larger container. Doing so every 3 years or so is often good enough. Also, because it's an epiphyte, that means that we know that it loves sharp drainage. So giving it a really nice kind of like cactusy, well-draining soil is absolutely a must. Because it grows naturally in rainforested areas, it's used to having rain just flow down, give it a nice hydration, and then that water just flows through. So this is a plant that wants to be watered maybe 2 to 3 times a month all year round, and then more so in its active growing season from around April until September. I'm filming this video here in my house in Pennsylvania, eastern Pennsylvania, in May, and this plant is on its 3rd flush of flowers. So I wanted to show you guys, or I wanted to kind of like create the scene. How do you actually induce these plants to create buds so that they will flower when we want them? Generally from September until like April is the time where you can really be getting flowers intermittently throughout that period of time. I had flowers here November, February, and now a 3rd time in May. So there's really 3 requirements that these plants have in order to initiate that bud formation, okay? So before we get to that, let's get to the rest of the year when it's not in bloom. When it's not in bloom, it's really quite easy. Give it a place in a well-lit room that's 70 to 80 degrees. That is the optimum temperature. And you can water it once a week. If it has more sunlight, maybe a little bit more, twice a week will be great. And it's also April to September is the time that we want to be fertilizing them. You really want to feed them once or twice a month during that season in order to give it enough nourishment so that it can then produce flowers in that winter time. Okay, so we're gonna fast forward till around September 15th. So let's just say September 20th, first day of fall. The days are getting shorter, the temperatures are getting cooler. Those are the requirements that these plants need. Once you're about ready to start preparing your plant to bloom in the holiday season, take it out of that warmest area of the home, put it into the coolest area of your home. I'm talking 55 to 65 degrees Fahrenheit, Those are the ideal temperatures that these plants actually need in order to kind of stress it to that point where it says, all right, let's start to create some flowers. Let's produce those flowers as that stress response, okay? So you really want to put it in a room with cooler temperatures. Now, I keep this plant in my living room over there, which is it's not actually attached to my central heating. So that room will naturally stay cooler than the rest of the house, especially during the fall and winter months. So about every 6 to 8 weeks, it kind of like re-enters that cycle of producing flowers, which is beautiful. So if you have a room that's a little bit cooler, that is really the best area to keep these plants during that fall, winter, early spring period of time. And then in those areas, you can actually induce them to create flowers more than once. Okay, so the cooler temperature is the first requirement. The second requirement is that these need a longer nighttime. They need like 12 to 15 hours of relative darkness in order to create those flower buds. Now, because the living room, I don't spend a whole lot of time in there. I'll spend, in the evenings in there, but the rest of the day I never have any lights on. It's by a window, but it's not a super sunny window. And in that area, it's absolutely perfect because it gets a long night of rest, a long night of darkness, and that is exactly what these plants will need in order to create flowers more than once. They need to have a longer period of darkness. So if you don't have a room that gets enough darkness, what you can do to really kind of ensure that you're going to induce those flowers for the holiday season is to get a large paper bag. Don't use plastic because plastic is not going to allow good enough airflow. And generally your paper bags aren't going to be big enough. So just kind of rip the sides a little bit. And just like that, you're gonna keep your plant in that darkness for about 6 weeks. Now, you wanna make sure that there's enough airflow that can continually circulate, so it's not like suffocate, totally blocking any airflow from your plant. That's why the rips are actually quite beneficial. Still allows airflow to circulate in. And the third thing is that when you're giving your plants these cooler temperatures, it's really important also start to restrict the water that you're giving your plant. While they like to be readily watered during its active growing period from April to September when it's actually getting larger, go ahead and water them on a very regular basis. But once you're starting to induce flowers, you want to restrict the watering. Give it watering maybe once to 1.5 times a month. That's about it. So especially if you have it under that bag, every 3 weeks, give it a little bit of water just to make sure that it's not like totally drying out, but that is going to be enough. And those 3 factors, giving it the cooler temperatures, giving it some relative darkness, and giving it a restriction of water or not giving it water are the 3 requirements that you really need to give your holiday cactus in order to set buds and then to reproduce flowers later on. So if you have a room where it naturally stays cooler, that stays a little bit darker during those winter months, you can restrict water and you're often going to find that they're reblooming throughout the season, giving you more than one period of flowers just like mine. And the last thing that you really need to make sure to do in order to keep your plant healthy and clean is that when you see the flowers start turning like this, it's really important, go and pluck them off and get rid of them. Because as you remove the old flowers, it signals the plant to create new flowers as well. So the flowering will just continue. And that is really important for the health of your plant. Okay, so the last topic that I wanted to discuss in this video is propagation. Now, this plant is not blooming. You don't want to do a propagation of your plants during the winter season. The best time is during this active growth period. So as I mentioned, I'm filming this video in May. So this is really a great time to do propagation of your plants if you want to. And it's also a good time to kind of reshape your plant. You can propagate the material that you are cutting off to reshape it. So this area is a little bit overgrown, so why not propagate this? Oh, actually this looks like a perfect spot just right here. So when we're propagating, always definitely you want to take the end tips, because those often have like the most hormonal action inside of the plant cells. So always cutting off the end tips is the best. Now we want to aim for about 3 to 4. We call, I've been calling these leaves, but what these actually are flattened stems. It's actually not even true foliage. So we're going to cut off 3 to 4 of these little sections, and that is exactly what we want to do when we are propagating. So really and truly, the best spots to do the propagation, you see where this kind of becomes like this like V shape, and like it's even like a double V, I should say. So this is a V-shaped little section, and it has 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is really the best spot to do it. So I'm going to cut off right there. Oopsies. Just like that. This is a beautiful cutting that we will propagate now. Okay, so I cut off 4 of these little sections. I would rather put a few into a container rather than just putting a single one. It fills in faster and it just makes me happier. What I have is this cute little 3.5, 4-inch pot filled with some nice quick draining succulent cactus mix, which will be perfect for propagating our holiday cactus in. So when I do this, I like to actually get my substrate wet first. I find it easier. So you see, getting it wet first and then mixing around with like a knife or a chopstick just to ensure that all of your substrate is nice and wet is going to make it the easiest when you're sticking our cuttings in so that they can stand upright. Okay. Now, as we go to actually placing these in, I'm going to place it pretty much that whole first lobe. I'm going to place underneath the soil, about 1 inch. Then I'm going to give it just a little bit more water, just to kind of really make sure that these cuttings are nice and moistened in the substrate. Let all that extra water filter out. It's great. And now I'm going to put this in an area that's warm with indirect light. I don't want to put it in hot light. The most important thing for root formation is warmth, not sunlight, okay? So if you do have like one of those cool little seed starting heating pads, that is perfect to get these started. And in about 6 weeks or so, these should have some roots forming, and you will notice most likely by new growth occurring from the top. That'll be your sign that roots have formed, and that's great. That's what we want. Now, with all of that in mind, I think that you can easily grow your holiday cactus with success. It'll be a beautiful adornment inside your home for years and years to come because they're such a long-lived plant. And with a few of the tips that I included in this video, I think that you can even encourage yours to produce more than one flush of flowers throughout the year, which is such a special treat to enjoy from your holiday cactus. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to give it a little like. Think about subscribing, joining the Plant Vibrations team, posting videos all the time, all about plant-related material. Anyways, I'll catch you later. Ciao.